The NBA trade deadline has also come and passed. Today, on Brandon's World, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 teams in the NBA that are under pressure to win the 2025 NBA Finals, the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Some of the teams on my list today are currently out of the playing spot, number 11, number 12 in their conferences for the NBA postseason this year. So this is not the top 10 teams in the NBA. This is strictly because of your roster. Maybe you're having a good year. Maybe you're having a year that nobody thought. Maybe, you're an older roster with veteran players trying to chase one more ring or trying to get the first ever ring. Maybe this is your best shot at it. These are teams that I believe absolutely have to win the NBA championship this year. They're under the most pressure to do so. Now, excuse me, just to give you a quick thought of where my head is at with these rankings today. Before the Luka Doncic trade, I would have told you the Los Angeles Lakers are easily top three, top four, maybe even top two on this list because of the fact they were on LeBron James' timeline. LeBron James trying to get that fifth championship. Anthony Davis always brittled, always injured. They're the two top stars. Can they finally get over Denver, etc., etc.? After the Luka Doncic trade, though, I believe they are no longer on the timeline of LeBron James. They are on the timeline of Luka Doncic. I don't think they really care if they win the championship or not. They have Luka Doncic for the next decade. I think they feel like that even when LeBron leaves, there could be a better group of cast around Luka Doncic. I don't think there's really too much pressure on the Lakers this year to win the title, which is why I have omitted them from this list. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to count down from number 10 to number one. Number 10 is the Houston Rockets, who last made the NBA Finals in 1995, if you can believe it. That was the year when Michael Jordan returned from his 2 year sabbatical when he was playing minor league baseball with the Chicago White Sox. Hakeem Olajuwon led the Houston Rockets to back-to-back championships during the 1993, 1994, and 1994-1995 seasons. Houston Rockets, they've had very good teams in the past. Obviously, we know the battles they went through, including the 2018 Western Conference Finals against the Golden State Warriors. James Harden, Chris Paul had that team of 3-2. They were on the brink of the finals. They lose game six in Golden State. They come back in their building in game seven at the Toyota Center in Houston. They miss the most consecutive 3-point shots ever in an NBA playoff game, and they have not really gotten back to the promised land since. However, this is a very young team. If you recall before the season, when I made my NBA predictions, I like the Rockets to be somewhat of an Oklahoma City of this year. They were really coming on at the end of last year, even though Golden State got that final spot in the playing tournament. They were really pushing Golden State, if you remember, right down the stretch of the season. I liked the likes of Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Sengun to all take a big lead this year, and they have. And listen, with the Luka Doncic trade, I don't even know if this Houston Rockets team is going to be a Western Conference Finals team. They are a young team, but I do always feel like with young teams, like, listen, we all don't think Houston is better than Oklahoma City. Nobody does. I don't think anybody really feels like Houston is better than Denver or better than the Lakers. They're probably right there with Memphis, somewhere along there. But I think when you have a team this good, this young, the question I always have is, we always think success is linear, but it's not. And so, like we saw with the Sacramento Kings a couple years ago, where they were, a 2 free seed, they have fallen off ever since. They no longer have Mike Brown as a coach. DeAndre Fox is no longer with the franchise. He's now in San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama. So that's my thinking here with Houston is, listen, this team has not been to an NBA Finals in 30 years. This may be one of their top three chances to get back. They should not waste this opportunity, which is why I have them on the list. Number nine is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, it is not the Knicks, and I'm going to tell you why. The Knicks have not reached the Eastern Conference Finals since 2000. And yes, they do have Mikal Bridges, and yes, they do have Karl-Anthony Towns, and yes, they do have Jalen Brunson, who showed himself out to prove to be a superstar last year in the NBA postseason. My argument here with the Knicks is everybody does feel like they are the third best team in the East, right behind Boston, right behind Cleveland. So nobody expects them to really make the finals this year. Whereas Minnesota, they're the ones that gave up on Cat. And also, by the way, preseason, nobody really had the Knicks as finals contenders. It was mostly, a Boston. Some people had Philadelphia, who I'm not including in this list either because Joel Embiid is injured and Paul George you can't trust, and the Sixers franchise is just a mess. I mean, in my opinion, there's no shot they haven't even make the playoffs, let alone get to a championship game. So I'm not even counting them in this list either. But Minnesota's the one that decided to break up Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. The Julius Randle trade has not worked out as well for Minnesota as it as for the Knicks. They've been a very inconsistent team this year, especially defensively. Offensively, sometimes it feels like Anthony Edwards is on an island. But when you make the Western Conference Finals and you were, the number three seed last year in the Western Conference, and the way Minnesota has regressed. Again, I think Anthony Edwards, a lot of people last year were comparing him to Michael Jordan that early, the success he had in the postseason to get Minnesota to the Western Conference Finals. Minnesota now has the expectations to be a great basketball team. And again, when you have a perennial player like Anthony Edwards on your roster, and you have guys like a Julius Randle or a Rudy Gobert, um, you know, Mike Conley, some of the other players, this team has some veteran laced players. You may not have this group of talent around you for long. The West, arguably, again, outside of Oklahoma City, is wide open. Can Anthony Edwards take that next step? Is my question. That's why, to me, because of the fact they made the Western Conference Finals last year, because you have Anthony Edwards on your team, you have to go win the championship. And to me, this year. Now, number eight is the Phoenix Suns, who made the NBA Finals in 2021. If you remember, they went on that run. They beat the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals. You had Chris Paul, Devin Booker leading the charge, that dynamic backcourt. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago at the trade deadline, they decided to basically give up on Chris Paul. And they went and got Kevin Durant, and him and Chris and Devin Booker did not work out. So they traded Chris Paul for Bradley Beal. And I said at the time Bradley Beal and Devin Booker are basically the same player. They're both the scorer. They tried to make Devin Booker the point guard. I think Bradley Beal is actually more of a distributor than Booker. They wanted to see if Devin Booker could be a legit number two or even a number one and be that leader the way Chris Paul was the leader, because Kevin Durant is not a leader, that I can tell you. And to me, Phoenix, listen, they were willing and able to trade Kevin Durant to the Golden State Warriors at the NBA trade deadline. The Warriors did not turn it down. Kevin Durant turned it down. And so for Phoenix, this franchise that, again, like they won the West in 2021. They made the finals. The next year, they lose game seven to Dallas in Phoenix. That was the Monty Williams coach team. That was the disaster in waiting. That was DeAndre Ayton, who just got out physical and out tough by the Dallas Bigs in that game. And that sort of felt like the Suns' sort of last chance at the championship. They tried to sort of band-aid it together. The only way this Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, this old big three era in Phoenix works out, and the way that you don't remember that Phoenix almost traded away Kevin Durant at the trade deadline, is to win this year. Number seven, the defending NBA champion, Boston Celtics. Listen, in Boston, if this was in a smaller market, if it was a Phoenix, if it was in Oklahoma City, there probably would not be a lot of pressure on this Boston Celtic roster to win another championship to go back to back. But this is Boston. And, it always felt like the Celtics with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, they did win one championship. They got to two finals. Obviously, we're up 3-2 on the Lakers and Kobe Bryant in that 2010 series and could not find a way to put it away. Um, and it just feels like to me like the Boston area with their sports teams, right? The Bruins, the Patriots, the Red Sox, the Celtics. Your expectation in Boston is to not just win one championship, it's to win multiple. And this team, it took them years and years and years to get over the hump. Now they've done that. I think there's a lot of people out there that say, they played Miami without Jimmy Butler. Then they went to the Cleveland series. They played Donovan Mitchell, who was hurt the last two games in Cleveland. Then they played an Indiana team with Tyrese Halliburton beat up. And then they faced a Dallas team who was really a five seed. Maybe they got lucky that they played Minnesota in the Western Conference Finals, who was able to knock out Denver. So there's a lot of people saying that this Celtics team, even though in my opinion they were one of the deepest championship teams in recent NBA history, you want to talk about the defense of the likes of Drew Holiday and Al Horford and Peyton Pritchard, Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis to go along with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who shared the spotlight. But with Boston being, the number two seed in the East, right behind Cleveland, they have just as much depth. I think if you're a Celtics fan, you feel like getting only one championship out of this group right here would be a disappointment. And so that's why I think the city, I think the team, the depth they have, the expectations, they are certainly on this list. At number six, the 2023 NBA champion Denver Nuggets, who I just don't understand. It sort of felt like they went all in 2023. They had the perfect setup. Jamal Murray was healthy throughout the year. Nikola Jokic, who had won back-to-back MVPs, was snubbed of the MVP by Joel Embiid in Philadelphia. They had the likes of Jeff Green. They had Bruce Brown. You had a healthy Michael Porter. Aaron Gordon was sort of that perfect glue guy after coming over from Orlando. And it just sort of felt like all the stars aligned for Denver. Then all of a sudden last year, Bruce Brown leaves, Jeff Green leaves, Christian Braun does not give you the production you need off the bench. Offensively, Michael Porter disappeared in the Western Conference semifinals against Minnesota. Aaron Gordon disappeared offensively, and now it sort of feels like Jamal Murray is not as healthy as he was a couple years ago. But again, you have a generational talent in Nikola Jokic, who by many metrics is the best player in basketball. If not, at worst, he's top three. Anytime you have a top three player on your roster, you are expected to compete for an NBA championship year in and year out because the NBA is the sport of the superstar. At number five, the Golden State Warriors, who made that trade for Jimmy Butler. Again, they wanted to get Kevin Durant. they, excuse me, they, they could not get Kevin Durant, so they went out, they get Jimmy Butler, and it was a win now move. Now they are the number 11 seed currently in the Western Conference, but they don't care. They did not get Jimmy Butler and his culture. And we know how Jimmy Butler sort of fell out of the way in Miami. I still don't understand what happened between him, Eric Spoelstra, and Pat Riley. What I do know is playoff Jimmy is a real thing, and Jimmy Butler rises to the occasion when the moment matters. And Golden State, who this year did move off Klay Thompson, it's the official end of the Splash Brothers, but they are still trying to needle this window, which is the hardest thing arguably to do in sports, which is rebuild and compete at the same time. I think Golden State's starting to realize they have Steph Curry, who is, close to 35 years old. He's not getting any younger. They would like to squeeze every last bit of orange juice out of Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors they possibly can. That's why they went out and got Jimmy Butler. They feel like when it comes playoff time, they may have two of the top 10 players in the playoffs potentially of all time. For Golden State, I don't think it's going to work. I think it is a last ditch effort. But at the end of the day, they are under pressure to win the title this year. Number four, Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the newly acquired Kyle Kuzma for Chris Middleton, and the Milwaukee Bucks. They broke up the band, right? The band that won the 2021 NBA championship. And at the time when they won that NBA championship over Phoenix in 2021, Giannis Antetokounmpo was universally considered the best player in the world, and many people thought, "Oh, you have Chris Middleton, who is a very legit number two. You have Drew Holiday, excuse me, who is a very legit number three player, great 3-and-D guy, perfect complement to Giannis and Chris Middleton." With nobody, Boston still a few miles away and nobody even close in the East. Could Milwaukee go on a LeBron James? Could Giannis Antetokounmpo especially go on a LeBron James-esque run in the Eastern Conference? And it just has not happened. Giannis has been injured the last couple postseasons. And then they decided to move off Drew Holiday's defense in favor for Damian Lillard's offense. Obviously, Damian Lillard, who was in Portland for all those years, made one Western Conference Finals, got swept by Golden State, has always been considered a top three-ish point guard in the NBA, just on a really bad organizational franchise-wise. And yet, between the moves at coach, where they no longer have Mike Budenholzer and Adrian Griffin was shown the door, and now Doc Rivers, who has sort of done the opposite of Andy Reid, which is win the championship first and then go choke multiple, playoffs and finals jobs, whether it's with the likes of Boston or the Clippers or the Sixers or now Milwaukee. This is a really weird franchise and a really weird spot. I know Giannis is linked up long term, but it's Luka, it's Nikola Jokic. I mean, when you think of the best players in the world right now, you don't even think of Giannis. And in the East, you even think of, a Cleveland, a Boston, a New York before you get to a Milwaukee with young and up and coming teams like Orlando and Indiana. So, like I talked about a little bit with the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets, only getting one NBA championship and God forbid one NBA Finals appearance out of Giannis Antetokounmpo and this Bucks team, especially with the acquisition of Damian Lillard, which last year they were supposed to be the favorites. Giannis has not been healthy for the last two postseasons. Milwaukee is sort of a forgotten good franchise out there, if you will. I think they're absolutely under pressure to win the title this year. Number three, without a doubt. You trade Luka Doncic. I said it at the time. In order for this to not go down as one of the most historic, lopsided trades, in my opinion, in NBA history, And Anthony Davis already got hurt on a non-contact abdominal injury in the second half of his first game in a Dallas Maverick uniform. And Luka Doncic goes, crazy, scoring over 30 in his first game in a Los Angeles Lakers uniform. In order for the Dallas Mavericks franchise, in order for this ownership and general manager and front office to ensure their fans we made the right move not paying Luka Doncic, who was a beloved figure in the Dallas area. Dallas fans thought they had gone from Dirk Nowitzki to Luka Doncic, one of the best foreign players of all time, for 2 decades with Dirk and 2 decades with Luka, and we're gonna eventually break through. And we made the finals last year, and the Kyrie Irving trade worked out in order for Dallas, who, in my opinion, blew up their ever present future. You have to win the title this year, not next year, this year. Because, in my opinion, Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis will never be more healthy than they are right now. Other teams are going to get better. Now, they may have just lost Daniel Gafford to some injury, who they acquired at the trade deadline last year. That's going to hurt them. But Dallas, in order for your franchise to not revolt against you for the rest of your lives, you have to win the title this year. Number two and number one are really interchangeable to me. They're the top two teams in the league, Oklahoma City and Cleveland. Here's the story with both of these teams. Oklahoma City, more so, we all saw them as the number one seed last year, who was a little bit too young. Dallas was definitely bigger. Shed Ingram was a young kid. He's just getting back from injury. We sort of saw Oklahoma City as needing more experience. Many people, including myself, not only picked Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who again, he with an incredible postseason. We're talking about him. We're talking about Anthony Edwards. We're talking about Jokic. We're talking about Luka. We're talking about LeBron. We're talking about Steph. Hell, we're even talking about Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell at this point, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown before we even get to Giannis Antetokounmpo, which is more of my point on Milwaukee and their forgottenness. In my opinion, I think Oklahoma City last year was a team that was just a year away. They needed more experience. They got more depth now. Alex Caruso was a great signing for them, defensive guy. They had their rim protector back in Shed Ingram. This team has been the best team in the Western Conference, bar none, since day one of the season. They really feel like a Boston S team from a year ago, just a lot younger, and you can see the camaraderie this team has. This team is going to stick around for years to come, at least with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. But again, we thought with Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo, those franchises in Denver and Milwaukee could have been dynasties, and we have not seen them be the same since. We saw Minnesota arguably make a irrational move when they gave up on Karl-Anthony Towns after not making the NBA Finals last year, in the first real year where Anthony Edwards really blossomed as a top player in the future of the sport. For Oklahoma City, they have the coach, they have the youth, they have the depth. They've been the best team in the West, and when you are the best team in the West, you are expected to win championships. Same thing for my number one team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the reason why I say they are the number one team on this list with the most pressure to win the title this year. No, it is not because I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. It is because last year the Cavs were bullied in the postseason. They had JB Bickerstaff as a head coach, and even though they did make the second round of the playoffs for the first time in their, nearly 30 years without LeBron James on their roster, it just, for Clevelanders, right? It didn't feel good enough. They were pushed around by a very young Orlando team with Pablo Banchero becoming of age as we spoke. And Cleveland fans did not think that series should have went a long way. Well, this year they bring in Kenny Atkins. They get off to a 15-0 start. Donovan Mitchell was playing highly efficient basketball. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley are also all stars. They are playing the best of their careers. Jared Allen, the center, in my opinion, is the straw that stirs the drink. And even he did not make an all-star team without talented the bigs are out there in the Eastern Conference. And again, the way the Cavs started off this season, the Kenny Atkinson, the Golden State Warriors influence, the fact that they gave up on some young players they like, Caris LeVert, an expiring contract, and Georges Niang, to the Atlanta Hawks for DeAndre Hunter, signaled to me this Cleveland Cavaliers team is all in. They finally have a legit wing, something Cleveland fans have been asking for years in DeAndre Hunter. And when you make a move like that at the trade deadline, you are signaling to your team, we are upgrading because we are going on a deep playoff run. And in a year where the East, with Indiana and Orlando dealing with a lot of injuries, Miami dealing with the Jimmy Butler turmoil, the Knicks getting off to a little bit of a slow start, nobody really know what's going on in Milwaukee. It does feel like a two-team race between the Cavs and the Celtics for the Eastern Conference crown. And again, when you have been the best team in the NBA since day one of this season and you have legitimate wins to your credit against the likes of an Oklahoma City, against the likes of a Boston, you have proven you are legit. You don't know how much of this success is going to carry over from year to year. Your guys are playing at an all-time level. Expectations can change prior to the season. And in my opinion, as I've been saying on local podcasts that I've gone on, or just here on Brandon's World, or even championship rings that I do with my good buddy Josh Unger, it is now championship or bust for this team here in Cleveland. So, to recap, these are my top 10 teams under the most pressure this year to win the 2025 NBA Finals. Number 10, Houston Rockets. Number 9, Minnesota Timberwolves. Number 8, Phoenix Suns. Number 7, Boston Celtics. Number 6, Denver Nuggets. Number 5, Golden State Warriors. Number 4, Milwaukee Bucks. Number 3, Dallas Mavericks. Number 2, Oklahoma City Thunder. And number 1, Cleveland Cavaliers. These are not the 10 best teams in the NBA. These are the 10 best teams that, based off whether it's a trade you made at the trade deadline, or whether it's your roster, whether it's your coach, whether it's your conference down, maybe you're trying to get one last ring, whatever the circumstance may be, these are the teams that have to win the title this season. And again, I omitted Philadelphia because of the Joel Embiid injury, and I omitted the Los Angeles Lakers because they are no longer on LeBron James's timeline. LeBron may have to win the title this year, but the Lakers do not because they are now on Luka Doncic's timeline.
Like that clip from the Brandon's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.